I've always described this series as a sort of televised Dark Knight. Both of these stories, starring badass masked vigilantes, are gritty and mostly street level and deal greatly in morality and philosophy. The slow burn nature of the narrative is one of the season's most effective components. Within the first 2 or so episodes, we get these foreboding and ominous references to our main villain. In episode 3, we're fascinatingly and subtly physically introduced to Wilson Fisk. This introductory scene of his is quiet and solemn as Fisk views the Rabbit in a Snowstorm painting in an art gallery, which he states makes him feel alone, which is a brilliant contrast to the subsequent episode, in which Fisk ragefully takes off a man's head with a car door. An episode or two go by before our protagonist and antagonist verbally meet via phone call. Then a few more episodes go by before Fisk finally comes face to face with Daredevil in one instance and Matt Murdock himself in another. Both of these instances occurring within the same episode. Their masterfully executed rivalry is phenomenally and very gradually built up and resolved for the time being. The conclusion to Fisk's Season 1 story is summed up in a brilliant image, the one in which a now imprisoned Kingpin stares at the blank cell wall before him, which in this moment very much mirrors not only our introduction to this man, but also the shot in which a young Wilson is forced to stare at a similarly blank wall by his abusive piece of shit father. The cast of characters is simply excellent. Charlie Cox is absolutely brilliant in the role of Matt Murdock. He's witty and charming whilst also being genuinely empathetic. All the while, Cox makes a badass Daredevil. He's physically fit and acrobatic and so believable and exceedingly imposing. Deborah Ann Woll is spectacular in the role of Karen Page. She is persistent, courageous, authentic, intriguing, especially in the morality department. Vincent D'Onofrio is a powerhouse as the brutal and broken Wilson Fisk. He is the highlight of the series. Daredevil Season 1 is filled to the brim with antagonists, but all of their respective implementations are organic and wonderfully balanced. You've of course got Wilson Fisk, the head of the snake. Wesley is Fisk's right-hand man. He's quiet and ruthless, and Wilson evidently cares a great deal about him. Leland Owlsley, played by Bob Gunton. Gunton having been particularly nefarious as Warden Norton in the cinematic classic The Shawshank Redemption, is this fantastically mouthy and weaselly character. Madame Gao is this badass, elderly, powerful woman, while Nobu is this immense physical threat. Episode 10, entitled Nelson v. Murdoch, really beautifully depicts the deep friendship between Matt and best pal Foggy Nelson. Charlie Cox and Eldon Henson really act their asses off in this episode, truly solidifying their realized, strong, and impactful bond. Vondi Curtis Hall is wonderful in the role of Ben Urich. His death at the hands of Kingpin is exceedingly impactful, especially considering it occurs shortly after we're introduced to the lovely relationship between Urich and his sweet ailing wife. The main cast is rounded out by 2 wonderful performers, Islet Zerere in the role of Vanessa, and Rosario Dawson in the role of Claire Temple. Nurse Claire is inherently caring and courageous, while Vanessa is quite fascinating. She's charming and quietly powerful. She's subtly nefarious, but quite clearly loves Wilson. Another primary reasoning behind the true brilliance of this first season, and the entirety of the series in general, is the wickedly and realistically choreographed hand-to-hand combat. The action is authentic, at times brutal, and episode 102 introduces us to this once per season one-shot action sequence, each of these sequences being technical f***ing marvels, no pun intended, in every solitary respect of filmmaking. Season 2 is very solid, though I do believe it to be inferior to the seasons it's sandwiched between. The narrative this season is more so disjointed, kind of deliberately so, as the stories of our villains slash anti-heroes this time around are largely disconnected from one another. It's less so grounded than the first season. I personally prefer the realism, and unfortunately there's a severe lack of Fisk. That being said, Season 2 deals in very good storytelling and absolutely delivers moments of pure awe. John Bernthal kills it as the badass and commanding Frank Castle slash Punisher. Elodie Young is fantastic and I believe quite underrated in the role of Elektra. She's wild, tough as nails, ruthless, seductive. The second chapter is also unquestionably my favorite depiction of ninjas on television in the form of The Hand. They're intimidatingly quick and quiet and stealthy, and in the realm of action, the ultra-impressive one-shot staircase sequence is an absolute blast. Season 3 is not only my favorite season of the series, it is also one of my favorite seasons of television ever. Kingpin returning to the forefront is a beautiful thing. The addition of Wilson Bethel's Ben Poindexter, aka Bullseye, is a season highlight. Bethel's performance is really magnificent, both vulnerable and quite unnerving. The exploration of his past is brilliantly creatively depicted, and Fisk's relationship with him is fascinating, and of course manipulative on the part of Wilson. The season 3 one-shot sequence is truly masterfully executed, undoubtedly the strongest of the one-shot trio. The practically 11-minute duration alone is so impressive and admirable. I really dig the addition of Agent Ray Nadeem. This character provides us an incredibly intriguing insight into a beyond corrupt administration from the perspective of a guy who is truly good at his core, but is at the center of all of this corruption. Deborah Ann Wool's highlight of the season is the unfathomably ballsy scene in which Karen Page confronts and stands up to Kingpin in his residence, intensely revealing to him that she's responsible for the murder of his late best friend Wesley. The big climactic fight between Daredevil Fisk and Dex in the finale is an absolute thrill to watch. I love the mix of fighting styles on display here. Matt and Bullseye are meticulous and acrobatic, while Kingpin fights like a brutal, raging gorilla or rhinoceros. Matt's ultimate defeat of Kingpin is viscerally triumphant, goosebump-inducing, masterful television. Cox is unfathomably good as he delivers his final words to a defeated Fisk, only after he has bloodied both Wilson himself and the rabbit in a snowstorm painting behind him. This series is unquestionably the best thing Marvel has ever done. It is exceptionally smartly written. It is packed with awesome performances. It deals in the complexity of morality and political/governmental corruption. It is the best comic book TV series ever created.